kind of giving that understanding of submission, verse 22, Paul addresses married women. He says, the first thing I need you to know is this: you must develop in your home a disposition of submissiveness. And then he tells us why in verse 23, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. You know, it's hard to say, well, the first part of the letter deals with doctrine, the latter portion gets practical. No, doctrine is always interwoven into Paul's letters. And he's saying interwoven into all of this is a deep theological truth. There's a reminder here that one of the greatest purposes in marriage is giving the world a living, breathing example of what it means to belong to Christ. You've got to remember this in your marriage. It's so much bigger than you. That's the problem. We're so selfish. It's all about us. And you've got to remember in marriage, this is so much bigger than us as individuals. And wives, as you develop this disposition of submission and respect to your husband, you're giving the world around you a glimpse of how all of us as God's people long to be submissive to Christ. That as you respect your husband, that you demonstrate that I want this man to be the head of my home, that I want this man to be my leader. In that very context, in your married life, you're demonstrating the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You're putting the power of the gospel on display so that your children see it, so that your neighbors see it, so that your friends see it. Because they ask you, how in the world can you relate to your husband in that kind of way? And you're able to tell them it's because of Jesus who changed my life and has transformed how I see everything, including my husband. That there's something about this marriage bond in the Christian home that reflects the grace and glory of Christ like nothing else. Then look at verse 24. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. In everything. Now, we've already talked about the exception to this. If your husband is leading you to anything immoral, to disobey Christ, get out. Don't follow. But Paul says in everything. Why would Paul include that last phrase? Why would he not just be general, just be respectful in general? Why in everything? Well, because he's talked about that the marriage relationship reflects our relationship to Christ. And listen, in our relationship to Christ, we know that if we're not submissive to Christ in everything, then we're probably not going to be submissive to Christ in anything. And in the marriage relationship, we're to put others first. But the minute you begin to develop exceptions, you're not really putting that person first. You're putting you first. Because what you're really saying is that I'll put you first as long as it's convenient for me. I'll put you first as long as it's advantageous to me. And Paul says that's not what we're looking for. The love and respect that God calls us to in marriage says, I'll put you first no matter what the cost. Even when it's not easy, even when I don't feel it, even when it's not convenient, because that's the way Christ loves me.